Our customers have given us over 340,000 five-star reviews on Trustpilot. That's double any other travel insurance provider. We covered over 7 million people with pre-existing medical conditions. And in just 18 months, we've paid over £128 million in claims. So relax knowing we're there if you need us. That's why people choose Stay Sure.
In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World, your new home for global news, is here.
Bomin Irani, your acting career begins at a very young age of 41. And so usse pehle it was photography. You had captured India through the lens of a photographer, and then you worked in the hospitality sector as well.
This is NDTV, and you're watching NDTV 24/7.
A very good afternoon. You're watching India Global. I'm Gaurie, Dwivedi. Over the course of the next 60 minutes, we're going to get you all the details, all the updates as far as what is happening in West Asia, including reports from ground where our colleagues are standing by. First up, the headlines. A day after US struck 3 Iranian nuclear sites, Iran vows retaliation, says a powerful operation will take place after American strikes on its 3 nuclear sites. Oil prices jump, Asian markets dip as Middle East crisis deepens. Iran's call to potentially close the Hormuz Strait threatens global markets and a potential carnage in global shipping lines. The B-2 Spirit bombers return home after US strikes in Iran. The B-2 bombers returned to Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri, from where they started their journey to bomb the 3 nuclear sites in Iran. Operation Sindhu underway. 400 Indians expected to return from Iran. Over 1,700 Indian nationals already evacuated from the war zone. And Donald Trump's Make Iran Great Again pitch. He hints at the willingness for a regime change in Iran hours after his Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said there is no such plan for America. All right, viewers, we start the show with updates coming in from Operation Sindhu. A special flight under Operation Sindhu brought back over 280 Indian nationals from war-hit Iran on Sunday, and more flights are likely to now take place soon. They will bring back more Indians that are stranded there. This would be largely students and some pilgrims as well. Among the passengers will be more than 200 students from the state of Jammu Kashmir, along with several pilgrims who have traveled to Iran for their pilgrimages. And there are also now evacuation plans in place for Israel as well. Those Indians who want to come back from Israel, they need to register themselves on the app, and the Indian embassy there is trying every bit that all those evacuation processes are completed in due course and as early as possible. My colleague Ankit Tyagi is joining us live from Israel, giving us all updates, all details of how things are unfolding. Talk to us, Ankit, the latest that's happening. The update that we have is that 2 more batches are likely to return via Jordan and Egypt. Fill us in, give us the details. You're standing by, it seems, at one such center.
All right, let me very quickly give you an update of what's happening at this moment in Tel Aviv, where an alert was sounded just a few moments ago for people to be prepared for possible some projectiles in fact being launched here. At this moment, the sirens have not gone in, and just as we speak, people are coming out of some of the shelters that they had gone into. So a lot of people had immediately rushed to the shelters. They are now coming out. So what the process is that you get a message on your phones with a beep sound which continues for a couple of minutes, and post that that's an alert for people to in fact try and head towards the nearest shelters. And after that, air raid sirens go off if there is a projectile that is or a missile or any sort of aerial projectile that is coming towards Tel Aviv. That was sounded. This is the second time, though at this moment the sirens have not gone on. So let me very quickly just turn this around and show you. People have just started trickling out onto the streets as we speak. So in the morning at around 3 o'clock also there was a similar alert which was followed by the air raid sirens, and what we were earlier told is that one missile was in fact intercepted by the the Israeli air defenses. It did not hit anywhere on the ground, but at this moment after the alert and when people rushing out to try and reach the nearest shelters, there are no air raid sirens. That means either before either that threat has been neutralized or it has not been able to be in the reach the vicinity of Tel Aviv. That is why the air raid sirens have not gone out. This is the latest as far as this threat assessment is concerned. On the other hand, remember, as we showed you in the morning as well, there have been Indians those who are now trying to, it's a voluntary process under Operation Sindhu, which is also taking place in Israel. And under this, about 600 Indians have been facilitated to move out of Tel Aviv. The process, in fact, is that you get in touch with the embassy, then the embassy tells you, and you have to reach the embassy at a certain given time in Tel Aviv, and from there, buses are arranged for people to be moved through true land routes. One is Jordan, Amman, and the other one is Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt. So far, there are 3 batches of Indian students and other Indian nationals, those who are here working here, caregivers, etc. All those, as I speak, I can hear some Israeli defense helicopters hovering over us, but so the 3 batches so far have gone. One went yesterday through the Amman-Jordan route. They are taken by road to that, and from there, Indian government has arranged flights which can be used for people to go to New Delhi. Today, 2 batches have in fact left from Tel Aviv. One in the morning at 7:30 a.m. local time through the Jordan route, and the other one at 8:30 a.m. local time through the Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt route. More than 600 Indians are at this moment on their way to India, and the government says that anybody who feels distressed, and since the tensions have heightened since massive barrage of missiles, 27 of them, those which came in yesterday, we are being told that all arrangements have been made to facilitate the return as far as the Indians are concerned. I guess still at this moment here a lot of air activity, though traffic is back on the streets. Let me just show you. Traffic is back on the streets. There is the home front advisory today till 8 p.m. local time that there are not supposed to be any large gatherings, and also school, colleges, government offices, and big shopping centers. All of them are shut till 8 p.m. this evening, so that if there is any eventuality, people are not found at the gathering where large-scale destruction can take place. In fact, the advisory very, very clearly says that you will have to be near your home unless and until it's absolutely necessary, or if you're an emergency worker, do not venture out of your house. So on any normal given Monday, where I'm standing, this entire area, the port area, would be filled with cars and people, and restaurants would be buzzing already. But at this moment, it's a quiet morning after a massive barrage of missiles that came into Tel Aviv on Sunday, which in fact landed in a few places in Tel Aviv and its suburbs as well, as we reported yesterday.
Ankit, I'm going to leave it there. Stay safe. And as Ankit was pointing out and telling us that air sirens have been sounded once again in Tel Aviv, and situation continues to remain tense. And as he was pointing out that another flight, 2 flights are going to head back, bringing more Indians. And in total, 1,700 have been brought back ever since this conflict started. Now, viewers, we focus on the B-2 bombers, the big mean machines that were used by the US for its Operation Midnight Hammer. They have come back to the Whiteman Air Force Base. How long they flew, what was the trajectory they took, the exact location that they bombed at the Iranian nuclear sites, all those are questions that my colleague Vishal Vivek answers in this ground report, because at the end of the day, those fascinating machines are the backbone of Operation Midnight Hammer of America.
This route shows you the extent that the aircraft went through. These are at least 7 B-2 bombers, the most sophisticated aircraft made in human history. These crossed the Atlantic. They flew from Whiteman Air Force Base, which is in Missouri, US. They flew across the Atlantic, went across the African continent, and then they reached over the Iranian airspace. And this is where the operation started. This is where the main action took place. We'll have more graphics in place. These are the support aircraft of the B-2 bombers. So the first two B-2 bombers dropped bombs on Fordo and Natanz. Fordo and Natanz are 2 of the most sophisticated Iran nuclear sites in history. Fordo is the most secretive one. So the first bomb was dropped on Fordo through this B-2 bomber. And these B-2 bombers were supported by at least 100 supporting aircraft. And these were in place so that if Iranians fire some counter missiles, they can also fire back and counter them. So luckily for US forces, that did not happen. They have said that Iran did not fire any missiles. They were there as a stealth mission, and they were extracted from there quite stealthily. So they dropped the bombs on Fordo and Natanz. And Isfahan is where Isfahan was attacked through the naval forces here. Naval forces attacked some Tomahawk missiles on Isfahan, and that is how the 3rd nuclear facility was attacked. And that is how the aircraft returned. The return journey was almost 19-hour long. They took totally about 37 hours to complete this mission. While the aircraft, all the 7 B-2 bombers were en route airborne, some refueling mission took place. These are some representative graphics to show you the refueling mission. So there were at least 3 to 4 refueling missions. The aircraft did not land anywhere. They flew across the Atlantic and then towards the Mediterranean, and then towards Iran. They did not stop. Each B-2 bomber had 2 pilots who flew non-stop for almost 37 hours. That shows you the level of planning. The top authorities in the US have already said this whole planning took at least 7 to 8 months. So that goes to show the level of precision this operation had, and it goes to show the mechanism that the US has when it comes to stealth bombers.
All right, viewers, a quick break. We return on the other side with what could possibly happen if the Strait of Hormuz actually closes, as Iran has been threatening. We come back and decode what could be the big impact on India and the world's economy. Stay with us.
When facts are fragmented, we put the pieces together. Where power collides with truth, we are there.
Behind me is that massive security arrangements that are in place.
Behind fractured boundaries, we clear the fog of war. Fault Lines with Gaurie Dwivedi, only on NDTV World.
In In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World, your new home for global news, is here.
From interesting tech startups to industry-leading companies, politics, sports, culture, curry, cricket. Oh, there's so much to talk about. Like me, if you too thrive on interesting conversations, this is a show you cannot miss. Watch this space to know more about all matters and all people that make Britain what it is today. Out of Britain, with me, Radhika Iyer.
Viewers, Strait of Hormuz could be shut is a threat that Iran has made several times in the past, but it is now beginning to act on it. And with that threat, that prospect, Asian markets plunged while oil prices also briefly hit 5-month highs amidst concerns of disruptions to energy markets after that threat came in from Tehran. It is still yet to be stamped by its senior-most Security Council, but if that actually happens, it could have devastating consequences for the global trade and global shipping lines. An output of about 3.3 million barrels per day actually travels through this route. The reason for that is Iran is the world's 9th biggest oil-producing country, and it exports almost half of that amount, keeping the rest for domestic consumption. And if Tehran does decide to retaliate, observers say one of the options of closing the Strait of Hormuz could mean that a fifth of global oil output would immediately stand to be impacted. A final decision, as I said, is yet to be taken, but both markets and price and crude market have reacted to that. But the response has been largely subdued so far, simply because it has yet to be stamped out by its senior-most security cabinet. Now, to understand the kind of impact this could have in terms of what it means for India, let's quickly now try and decode that for you viewers in terms of what this would mean for India if at all Strait of Hormuz actually is shut. Let's put some of those points for our viewers to understand that India right now is shielded to a large extent, but it's not immune. It's not immune from a crude shock if at all that Strait of Hormuz actually gets shut. Now, why is that? Why is India immune to some extent? Because a lot of its crude basket is now extremely diversified, and more than a third of its total crude actually now comes from Russia, something that has happened in the last 3 years ever since the Russia-Ukraine war started, and India was able to buy the discounted Russian oil, which now accounts for 35 to around 38% of its overall oil demands. And the most important part is that the Russian crude oil does not go from the Strait of Hormuz. It actually is shipped to India through the Cape of Good Hope. So this 35 to 38% of India's crude remains intact. There will not be a direct impact if the Strait of Hormuz shuts, because this is through the Russian oil. Now, the LNG imports of India will be impacted because that is something we still have a large dependence, not from Russia, but from some of the other big players in the region, that is Qatar as well as UAE, and along with America. These are the 3 big LNG exporters for India, and this will be impacted because this is supplied through the Strait of Hormuz, and that will have an impact on the overall India finances. India's sovereign finances will be impacted if the Strait of Hormuz is actually shut. As I said, we are shielded to a large extent, but we are not immune, because if it impacts everyone, we will also be impacted, and that will have a cascading impact on our overall finances. And given the fact that India is the world's 2nd largest crude importer, it will have an impact on our currency and overall finances as well. But as of now, viewers, I repeat what I said, which is that we are largely shielded But if it gets worse from here, we are not immune to it. And that's exactly what the Petroleum Minister also said. Mr. Hardeep Puri, listen in.
We had diversified the sources of supply, and out of the 5.5 million barrels of crude oil that India consumes daily, about 1.5 and 2 million only come through the Straits of Hormuz. We import roughly 4 million barrels through other routes, and our companies, the oil marketing companies, have enough stocks. We are in touch with all possible actors in this, the supply routes, etc., and I believe that there is no cause for any alarm on this score.
All right, let's quickly now get you the big questions that we are asking, and then the experts will be joining us to decode this in detail. How is the global economy likely to be hit in the event that the Strait of Hormuz is actually shut? How does the chokehold impact India? As I said, right now the impact is not so significant, but it could be. How much? The experts will decode that for us. And most importantly, will this mean that fuel prices will soar for India? If they do, we are looking at a larger impact on our finances. All right, let's get in Sanchita Mukherjee and Robinder Sachdev to talk more on this. Sanchita, let me start with you. But before I get in both Sanchita and Robinder, I'm told we have to now cut across to Union Minister Prahlad Joshi, who's speaking right now in Kharghya in Bihar. Let's first listen in.
और हम पार्लियामेंट में माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी के मार्गदर्शन में एक छोटा ग्रुप बनाया है सब मंत्रियों के साथ, तो कम से कम एक सेशन के बीच में 15-20 संसद सदस्यों के साथ एक मंत्री बैठ के बातचीत करना, उनका समस्या सुनना, उनके साथ सलाह मशवरा करना, ऐसे एक व्यवस्था माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी ने किया है। जो मेरे टीम में आपके एमपी श्री राजेश वर्मा भी है और बहुत एक्टिव रहता है, और राज्यसभा के एमपी और भारत के जो वकीलों का एक संघ रहता है, तो उसका पूरा देश का हमारा चेयरमैन और राज्यसभा के एमपी श्री मंडन मिश्रा जी, और इधर 4-5 टर्म से लगातार एमएलए रहे हुए हैं, चुन के आ रहे हैं, उनका लोकप्रियता का इसका साक्षी है, और बहुत सीनियर भी है श्री पन्नालाल पटेल जी, और एक इधर के एमएलए, स्थानीय एमएलए श्री संजीव कुमार जी, और हमारा सेक्रेटरी भी संजीव है, वो भी संजीव है, ये सहयोग है। संजीव कुमार जी हमारा सेक्रेटरी, उनका पूरा सहयोग के कारण, एक्टिव गाइडेंस के कारण इधर सैलो हो पाया है। ऐसे श्री संजीव कुमार जी, सीएमडी के एफसीआई के सीएमडी श्री आशुतोष जी, और इसके प्रमोटर श्री अनुराग जी और श्री राजीव जी, और इन दोनों लोगों को मैं तहे दिल से साधुवाद देता हूं कि उन्होंने बहुत प्रयास करके बिना कोई विवाद लैंड भी एक्वायर किया, लैंड एक्वायर नहीं किया, लैंड सबसे प्यार से बातचीत करके मार्केट वैल्यू से लैंड लेके, जगह लेके बहुत कम समय में एक अच्छा व्यवस्था उन्होंने खड़ी किया है। उसके लिए उनको भी मैं बहुत बहुत अभिनंदन करता हूं, धन्यवाद करता हूं। मित्रों, जैसे आप लोगों का हिंदी शुद्ध है, उतना मेरा हिंदी शुद्ध नहीं है। मैं दक्षिण भारत से आता हूं, तो ग्रामर में इधर उधर होता है, तो आप ही उधर ही एडजस्ट करके ठीक करा दो। दोस्तों, आज जो उद्घाटन कर रहे हैं ये सैलो खगेरिया में, ये 50,000 मेट्रिक टन का ये सैलो है। ये सैलो के एडवांटेज, इससे जो पॉजिटिव परिणाम होता है, एक तो जगह बहुत कम लगता है, दूसरी बात, माननीय प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी का सोच है कि देश में कम जगह में अच्छे भंडारण का एक व्यवस्था रहना है और उसमें स्टोरेज लॉस जो अंग्रेजी में बोलते हैं, मीन्स रख रखाव में जो व्यवस्था ठीक है तो वो 3 बरस के बाद 4 बरस के बाद भी वो सड़ नहीं जाएगा, खराब नहीं होगा। तो ऐसे व्यवस्था करने का इच्छा हमारा प्रधानमंत्री जी का है। तो इसीलिए एफसीआई को और हम लोगों को माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी ने निर्देश किया है, ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा ऐसे फुल्ली मैकेनाइज्ड ये सैलो है, इसमें पूरा स्टील से होता है, पूरा ऑटोमेटिक मैकेनिकल सिस्टम से होता है, उसमें मानव का कोई इसमें इंटरफेरेंस नहीं रहता है। कोई भी जाके उसमें अच्छे अनाज निकाल के बुरा अनाज उसमें डाले, चोरी चपाटी हो जाए, ऐसे कुछ होने का संभावना नहीं है। पूरा जो सीसीटीवी कैमरा भी रहता है और उसके साथ ही साथ जो भी इधर अनाज आता है, इधर से बाहर जाता है, ये पूरा मैकेनिकल तरीके से होता है। इसके कारण आज इस 10 साल में हमारा स्टोरेज और जो ट्रांजिट मीन्स यातायात में जो लॉस होता है वो भी बहुत कम होता है। आज के दिन में सिर्फ 0.2% लॉस आज के दिन में है। तो इसीलिए ये मैकेनाइज करना, टेक्नोलॉजी उपयोग करना, ये सब एक खगेरिया में 50,000 मेट्रिक टन का आज उद्घाटन किया है। तो इसके लिए नीतीश कुमार जी के नेतृत्व में हमारा दोनों उप मुख्यमंत्री और सम्राट जी और हमारे इधर के मंत्री और सभी एमपीज एमएलए का कोऑपरेशन से समयबद्ध तरीके से इस प्रोजेक्ट का पूरा हुआ है। मैं उन लोगों का भी मैं सहाय का स्मरण करता हूं। और इसी के साथ मैं ये भी स्मरण करना चाहता हूं, रामविलास पासवान जी मेरे से बहुत सीनियर थे, लेकिन मेरे बहुत प्रिय सीनियर मित्र थे, मुझे बहुत प्यार देते थे रामविलास पासवान जी। तो मेरा मित्रता ऐसा था, मैं एक उदाहरण बोलता हूं, मैंने बोला उस टाइम तो मैं प्रदेश अध्यक्ष था कर्नाटक के, मैंने बोला मेरे कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंसी में एक बीआईएस का ऑफिस आप खोल दो, ऐसे मैंने रिक्वेस्ट किया। रामविलास जी ने बोल दिया सबके सामने, मैं आपके लिए वो व्यवस्था कर देता हूं, लेकिन बाद में डीजी ने मना किया। लेकिन रामविलास जी ने, उस टाइम के डीजी, लेकिन रामविलास जी ने बोला मैंने मेरे मित्र प्रहलाद जी को वादा किया हूं, मैं उधर उद्घाटन के लिए जा रहा हूं, ऐसे अनाउंस कर दिया। तो जब उन्होंने अनाउंस किया तब तो करना ही।
All right, viewers, we were talking about what would happen if the Strait of Hormuz shuts down, and the questions that we were asking, how is the global markets and the global economy likely to be hit by that? What could be the kind of impact for India of the chokehold? And most importantly, what will be the outlook in terms of fuel prices? And if they soar, how will that impact India? Sanchita Mukherjee and Robinder Sanchdev with us on the broadcast. Sanchita, let me start with you. As things stand right now, this prospect looks more real than ever before. And how do you see that impacting? First, let's talk about the global economy, and then we come to India.
Thank you so much for having me on your show. I would just like to state that this is not an investment advice on oil prices, just a general discussion. The way I see it, the Strait of Hormuz controls almost 20% of the daily pass-through of the global oil supply, which is close to around 17 million barrels a day, and almost 25% of LNG, which is the liquefied natural gas, daily. So any impact on the Strait of Hormuz, any developing impact on this can have a repercussion on elevated oil prices in the near term. When it comes to India, the way I see it is the meeting which was guided by the Chief Economic Advisor to the Government of India, Mr. Anand Nageshwaran, on Friday, that in the immediate term, it is too soon to take a call that there'll be a significant impact because we do have low inflation. We have an ongoing good monsoon and the interest rate level in the country is low. There's ample liquidity. So we would have to watch this quarter on quarter for any significant impact. In fact, I really like what you just said, that for the time being, in the short term, we are shielded from these price movements because our oil basket is very, very diversified. But we are not immune to this. In the near term, we continue with our macroeconomic fundamentals being intact. But right now, I think the entire focus has gone beyond macroeconomic fundamentals and parameters to right now how Iran would retaliate and how it would actually impact the oil prices.
Prabendra Sachdev, your thoughts in terms of what may look like an extremely volatile and a shock actually to the world economy and therefore India.
Thank you so much, Gaurie. A pleasure to be with you and Dr. Sanchita. I mean, see, we may say that India is shielded, but I don't understand. If the world is impacted, how are we isolated and shielded, even if we have a diversified portfolio, right? We may be procuring, from other sources, we might go to others. But if overall world prices are high, we are going to be impacted by it, right? Now, one. Secondly, as you said, and as your colleague expert, she said that I think it depends upon the time and the duration. In the first 1 or 2 weeks, maybe we could say it's the sentiment, which would guide and all. What we'll have to see is how long this situation lasts. If Iran, blocks the straits, and there are variations to it, what does it mean blocking? Does it block for everyone? Does it allow Chinese cargo to go or whatever, right? But oil prices in the world will go up. If oil prices in the world go up, that also impacts our oil prices, right? And if our oil prices go up, our inflation also goes up. But that would happen if this, situation continues for more than, let's say, a couple of weeks, 1-2 months. And then, yes, this data would reflect in the next months, or whatever the quarterly numbers. Inflation would go up, our rupee would depreciate.
Yes.
Because our trade deficit would go up. Okay.
So let's put this very simply, sir. For the benefit of our viewers, let's try and declutter this. Let's try and unjargon whatever we are saying, because oil prices impact everyone. They don't need to understand any macroeconomics to understand that when they pay for their fuel, it will become costlier because we import most of it. We don't produce it here. We import it. We import, and not in Indian rupees, we pay it in dollar terms. And that is likely to be impacted because of the volatility. So if the dollar-rupee ratio changes, the price of crude changes, then of course we pay more. It's so simple as that. And when we pay more, it impacts our math, just the way it impacts our personal math, financial math, the same way the sovereign financial math also gets impacted if these numbers change for us. Sanchita, then let me ask you this in terms of, there are limited options that we have right now. We've diversified our basket. We take a lot from Russia. Even LNG, we now take a lot from America, more than some of the others, whether it is Qatar or UAE. But is there anything else that we can do to probably, no one can insulate, but probably have better preparations for something like this?
I think the key question or the key watchword in this entire conversation is that, our oil diplomacy is very, very strong, if I may put it, because, despite, if you were to see even previous events in the face of war, adversity, pandemic, all of that, sanctions, India's oil diplomacy with various nations, the backdoor channels that it has established in terms of diversifying its oil basket is very, very commendable. And that has held us typically in good stead over the years. If one were to look at, in fact, right now, I was just going through the oil marketing report by the International Energy Agency, IEA, which clearly states that the second half of 2025 oil prices are expected to be very stable to lower because there's a huge supply glut, there's an oversupply. Now, right now, that does not stand true because of this geopolitical tension, which is very, very short term in nature. Had this not been there, oil prices would have typically remained very, very low. Right. So now, right now, the way Iran retaliates, how this situation unfolds is very, very critical. But India, having said that, given its diplomacy across the exporting countries, be it crude oil, be it LNG, be it LPG, be it condensates, all of that. Yes. It's a very classic, and very few people can understand. It's actually not very simple to understand this oil diplomacy, but India has played its cards very well previously.
A quick word on India's oil diplomacy, Robinder Sachdev.
Well, absolutely so. See, all I'm trying to say is, yes, India's oil diplomacy is absolutely doing very well. A lot of work going on. But the point is, if the realities change, sure, with oil diplomacy, we are able to, tap into diversified sources, yes, right? Be it Russia or be it Venezuela even, let's say, right? But the point is, if the overall oil prices are increasing in the world, then even the Russian supplies or the US or whichever sources we get, right, those would go up. That's my big picture thing. As to what we can do, perhaps, is, I think, definitely is diversify our sources. We could perhaps look into currency swaps. Okay, or let's say rupee payment, those kind of mechanisms. What we could also look at is perhaps increasing our strategic reserve, which we have, I think, for about 9 to 10 days.
Okay, that's a very important point you made, that strategic reserves, strategic oil reserves of India, we can probably revisit the amount that we want to keep to ensure that we insulate ourselves from these global shocks. As far as some of the other measures you mentioned, I do believe they are going into more technical aspects of it, but I want to keep it unjargoned, because I firmly believe whenever you talk about public finance, the more unjargon you do it, the more people understand it, and I think that should be the ultimate goal. I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining me on this edition of India Global. And as we talk about Strait of Hormuz, I want to now shift focus on what Iran has been parallelly doing in terms of reaching out to Russia and also to China. In terms of Russia, it's a relationship that they've built on, and where you have the Russian foreign minister in Moscow to hold meetings with Vladimir Putin to understand what could be the kind of support that he expects that he will get from, his country will get from Russia going forward. Meanwhile, allies like Russia and China were quick to condemn Israel's attacks on Iran. They have stopped short of offering any concrete support whatsoever in this war right now. And that really brings us to what can possibly be the Russian game plan here, the Chinese thought process here. Let's put that out for our viewers in terms of some of the calculations that both Russia and China have. Let's first talk about the kind of calculations, Kremlin's calculations in this entire game plan. There's been an effort to reach out, but what is it that's really holding Putin back right now? Let's take that out one by one. The traditional hold of Russia has been challenged in this region. It has been done so ever since Bashar al-Assad was removed and Russia did not support him. And this is another instance where the Russian hold has actually been challenged. Next, this is very important, that the comprehensive treaty that was signed between Russia and Iran does not include any military reference. And this has been said by Vladimir Putin just 2 days back in St. Petersburg. And that just tells you the kind of position that Russia is likely to take, which may not be so military in nature. Next is that Russia now pretty much produces most of the Iranian Shahid 36 drones. So the peak of the military engagement that Russia and Iran had was possibly in 2022 when they gave the drones, and since then Russia has been able to manufacture them locally, so that military dependence has actually reduced of Russia on Iran. Next is that there is no duty to supply any military aid to Tehran. That's a clear thinking now within Russian camp, and that is a clear calculation that Kremlin has in terms of how they see it, because they do not want to also, the next is they also don't want to completely overturn their relationship with Israel. It's a long relationship, but it's also a complicated one. There are a very large number of Russian-speaking Jews who are in Israel. They are very prominent. they have a sway in the local politics there. And in the backdrop of that, Russia needs to be very careful about how it wants to continue to have an engagement with Israel. Let's move ahead now to talk about the Chinese conundrum that exists. Another ally that's been talked at length about how much is he going to support Iran? Will China come and back their Iran here? Let's put that out. What are the conundrums that China faces in this region? First and foremost, it does have deep economic interests in Iran. The hub and spoke model that Belt and Road Initiative is all about, a key hub of that is actually Iran. A lot of money has gone there, but it does not have the same military hold. So you have a deep economic presence, but if you do not have commensurate military hold, that exposes you to be able to play a major stakeholder there. Next, they have a lone base in Djibouti, which is their only military capability in that entire region. So there's been a lot of talk about how much of power projection China can really do. Well, not much with just one Djibouti there. Next, in terms of the positions itself largely as a diplomatic counter to America in the region. So it's largely about diplomacy that it sees, that how it wants to position against America in the region. But last and most importantly, which is that Beijing's power hinges largely on optics. So they want to keep talking about it, that they're very relevant in the region. They have huge presence, whether in terms of big economic engagements, but in terms of optics is what it matters. In terms of capability, it's very limited because military engagement and military capability is something that China has very little of in that region. And that tells you the kind of thought process that's currently on both between Russia and China, and how much are they likely to actually back Iran there. This, of course, now brings me to talk about what exactly some of them did at the UNSC. They talked a lot about what American strikes have been and what Israeli strikes have been in UNSC. They wanted, both Russia and China wanted to take a very firm position at the UNSC, but that hasn't happened so far, viewers. Let's play out some of those sound bites, both of Russia and China, to understand the context in which we are talking.
Своими действиями Соединенные Штаты открыли ящик Пандоры, и никто не знает, к каким новым последствиям это может привести. Выступая в этом зале уже трижды за прошедшие 10 дней, генеральный директор МАГАТЭ Рафаэль Гросси предупреждал, что удары по объектам иранской атомной инфраструктуры могут иметь абсолютно непредсказуемые последствия и создают огромную угрозу ядерной и физической ядерной безопасности не только в Исламской Республике, но и для региона и мира в целом. Однако Вашингтон совершенно не заботит ни радиологические последствия, ни угрозы для жизни и здоровья огромного числа мирных жителей, включая женщин и детей, в регионе и за его пределами.
中方强烈谴责美方袭击伊朗，攻击接受国际原子能机构保障监督的核设施。美方此举严重违反联合国宪章宗旨和原则以及国际法，侵犯伊朗的主权、安全和领土完整，加剧中东紧张局势，严重冲击国际核不扩散体系。
All right, to talk more about what can Russia and China do in terms of aiding and helping Iran, we spoke about the calculations that both of them have and which could limit their stakes in this entire region. But nevertheless, they want to continue with that optics, or at least Iran would want. What are those options? Let's get Michael Feller and Fred Weir to talk more on that. Michael Feller is a co-founder and chief strategist of Geopolitical Strategy. I believe that's a think tank that he runs. And Fred Weir is a senior journalist joining us from Russia. And in fact, Fred, let me start with you. We've spoken about and we've told our viewers what really are the moving parts to the entire Russia, Iran, China relationship. Help us understand, how does Kremlin view this particular scenario? Will Russia back Iran, and does that include a military backing as well?
Well, I think you summarized it very well back there. The main thing to keep in mind is, as alarmed as the Russians are, and they are very much so at the moment, their alliance, their strategic partnership with Iran does not include a military component. That's different from its relationship, for instance, with North Korea, which does have a mutual defense clause, which has already been activated. The North Koreans sent troops to Kursk region to fight the Ukrainians just this last few months. So Iran, there's nothing of that kind with Iran, and the United States, as far as Russia is concerned, can have a free hand, I think, in Iran. The last thing that Russia wants is a war with the United States or even Israel. So that said, Russia has a lot of stakes in Iran. They had been developing economic ties, rather deep ones, oil and gas, infrastructure, that north-south transport corridor, which Russia is investing hundreds of millions of dollars into building a railway to connect Indian Ocean ports with the Russian railway network. All that is in danger of being unraveled by this war, especially if there's regime change or national disintegration in Iran. Another thing that I think needs to be stressed here is the levels of duplicity that were involved, the lies that Donald Trump told, especially about peace talk. Twice Iran was subjected to this, having peace talks dangled before them and then hit. Well, this will reverberate in Moscow, where Donald Trump has been posing as peacemaker between Russia and Ukraine. Nobody is going to believe a word out of his mouth anymore.
Okay. Michael Feller, then let me ask you this in terms of the meeting that Iranian Foreign Minister and Vladimir Putin, that all-important meeting. In your assessment, what could be the big takeaway or highlight of it? Do you think just optics, showcasing of support with anything backing that? Or do you think there could be something more than that? I believe, Michael Feller, my voice is not reaching you. Okay, we'll collect that in just a bit. Fred, then let me ask you this. In terms of your expectations from a meeting like that, it's high profile, but would it just be all about optics, showcasing support, maybe speaking a little bit about it? Or do you actually expect something more than that could be there? Because, you know, for Vladimir Putin also there's a lot at stake. At the end of the day, Russia is a big stakeholder in the region. It wants to be seen as a big stakeholder there.
I think that there's very little Russia can do materially to help Iran. They may want to, but as I said, they have the ability to ship arms to Iran, but you know, across the Caspian Sea. But at this point, I don't see how much help that would be, even if the Russians did. But I think their biggest fear is, as it should be, is World War III. There is a real danger here of this thing blowing up into something much, much worse. That, you know, that this is the way big conflagrations get started.
Okay. That's an important point. Let's put that across to Michael Feller, whom I believe can now hear me. Mr. Feller, as Mr. Fred is saying here, that there is a real possibility of World War III happening. What do you think Russia and China are going to be doing there? Till now, they've come out with some solidarity, some show of support and solidarity, nothing more. Do you expect anything more? And particularly from China?
Yeah, it's been a show of hopes and prayers, but little else. I think that Russia put its cards on the table when Vladimir Putin said on the weekend that in some ways he considers Israel part of the Russian sphere because it has 2 to 3 million Russian speakers. So as absurd as that may sound to many, that's his way of saying that he's probably not going to provide much more material support for Iran. The thing with Iran, Russia and China is that this was at best an access of convenience, but it wasn't a real alliance. And you only need to look at Russian history to see that for most of its history with Persia and later Iran, they've been enemies. And if it weren't for mutual hostility to the United States, which is changing under Donald Trump, at least from the perspective of the Kremlin, if it weren't for that mutual hostility, there's not really much to go on.
So, Mr. Feller, then it also means that if there is nothing substantial that comes by way of more than just strongly worded statements from China and Russia, then it also means that it impacts their relationship with America with regards to the Middle East, doesn't it?
Yes, but they're going to prioritize their relationship with other Gulf countries. Saudi Arabia is far more important than Iran to both Russia and China, so is United Arab Emirates. They're not going to jeopardize those relationships for the sake of Iran or, I think, tolerate a blockage of the Strait of Hormuz. And certainly they're not going to waste their valuable firepower on defending Iran when respectively they have wars in process in Ukraine and wars potentially going to happen in the future, though I hope not, in Taiwan.
So then what is the basis, Mr. Fella? This is a question I asked to both of you. Mr. Fella, to you first, and then Mr. Fred, to you, which is that then if nobody, not even your traditional allies, are going to come and back you up, I'm not mentioning North Korea because that's the only fourth member of this quartet, but the traditional allies of Iran, if they're not going to come and back it when it's making threats like blocking of Strait of Hormuz, then can we safely assume those are just empty threats? And how do you then perceive Tehran to actually escalate this further, apart from the hawkish commentary that's just coming in? Do you think there's going to be something more than that?
It actually makes Iran more dangerous, in my view, because their back's against the wall, and they'll have less interlocutors to talk them down from the ledge, so to speak. You only need to look at the 1980s when Iran fought against Iraq, and both the Soviet Union and the United States essentially supported Iraq in that war. And it was only Israel, clandestine, in terms of clandestine aid, that was supporting Iran, ironically. But Iran showed it had grit and it was willing to fight with civilians on bicycles and all sorts of horrible things for 8 long years. So I don't think, Iran is a big country. I don't think this will necessarily deter Iran. It may change their calculus. It may change which approach they take. But from my perspective, the regime, its back's against the wall. It has no good options. It faces a dilemma. Does it take regime change externally imposed on it from the United States, or does it risk regime change internally if it does nothing?
All right, I'm going to leave it there, gentlemen. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining me on this edition of India Global. Well, as both gentlemen were saying, that stakes are high for Russia, but at the same time, it also needs to weigh in as to how much it wants to take a calculated risk. And that's really what the game plan here. And we also spoke about China, which continues to be a player, but not a significant strategic and military player in this region. At the end of the day, Iran may have its back to the wall. And could that be the reason for it to take more risks than what it can actually afford? Well, we'll have to wait and watch for that. And hopefully, that won't be the case. Well, viewers, we now shift focus and talk about the other aspect in terms of what Iran's nuclear pile and stockpile is all about, in terms of, well, some would feel that what is the real reason why the Iranian nuclear program continues to be a matter of such great concern. Let's put that out for our viewers to understand the Iranian nuclear poker that it continues to play. And why is it that it is actually a poker? The reason for that is that there is uncertainty, and some would say even a calibrated risk it wants to take in a probabilistic world. Let's put that out. First and foremost, why is it such a big problem? Well, because the enrichment of uranium in Iranian nuclear sites is at 60%. Now, why is that an alarming figure? Because Iran has all along said that it wants to only and only do that for civilian purposes. Now, how much do you actually need for civilian purposes? 3 to 5%. That's how much you need for nuclear energy reactors. So what's the logic for building it to 60%? That's been the cause of concern for energy experts, for IAEA, for America, for the world, that why need 60% when ostensibly you actually need only 3%? Next, in the other aspect, which is that the enrichment stockpile is already at 60% and could go up even more going further, and from 60 to 90% could actually happen very quickly. The 60 to 90% could mean very little time it could take for Iran to actually build a nuclear bomb, and which is why there's been rising concerns. The next important aspect in terms of the chain reaction that this could have. If there is a nuclear Iran, what is the chain reaction that could have? The reason why the world should be worried, first and foremost, is that there will be the entire region will want a nuclear bomb. There is whether it's the remaining countries, whether it's in Iraq, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, Oman, all of them will feel that they want a nuclear bomb as well. UAE has already said, and Saudi Arabia has already said, that they want a nuclear weapon if Iran has one. So that's the kind of chain reaction that will set in with the nuclear Tehran. Next, it will give cover for let's go back. It will give cover for Iranian proxies. Which are these Iranian proxies? You have Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis. All of them will get a nuclear cover. They will just have that shield. And who knows? These are all splinter outfits. These are all terrorist groups. When there is a nuclear weapon out there, who knows who would actually have it? And lastly, nuclear deterrence will be enough. That will be enough. They don't really even need to own a nuclear bomb. The fact that their benefactor, the fact that the entire resistance group actually has one, that itself will be enough. And that's the kind of chain reaction that a nuclear Tehran is likely to set, which is some of the other players in the region would want one. The resistance group will become that much stronger, and the entire region will become even more unstable, which is why the Iranian nuclear program has been a cause of such great concern for the world, for America as well. And at the end of the day, one talks again and again about what's the probability of Iran actually having a nuclear bomb. Well, no one knows. But at the end of the day, you go by probabilities in an uncertain world. And as we speak of that, well, there is also regime change that has been talked about again and again, viewers. Pete Hegseth, yesterday in the press conference, the defense secretary said America has no such plans when it comes to regime change. But Donald Trump has said that that is an offer that is very much on the table. So what is Donald Trump really trying to do? He's trying to make Iran great again. Parmeshwar Bawa has this report that tells you more.
Many will tell you that it's not politically correct to use the term regime change, but those aren't our words, they're US President Donald Trump's. In a fiery Truth Social post that's now viral, the US President floated the idea of toppling Iran's leadership again. But I'll tell you why this one is significant. This is the first time in the current conflict that Trump has openly suggested what many in the region fear: a US-backed regime change in Tehran. The post comes just hours after US B-2 stealth bombers struck multiple Iranian nuclear sites, what Trump called monumental damage. He claimed the strikes were hard and accurate and revealed the bombers flew for over 36 hours from Missouri and back. But here's the contradiction. While Trump is talking about MEGA, which is Make Iran Great Again, by possibly toppling its government, his own Vice President J.D. Vance is publicly saying the opposite. In an interview, J.D. Vance clarified that the United States does not want a regime change. He said they want to end their nuclear program and they want to talk to the Iranians. This also then raises the question, is the United States speaking in two voices? Meanwhile, Israel, which launched its war on Iran-linked militias 10 days ago, has never hidden its agenda. Prime Minister Netanyahu has said outright that regime change in Iran could be one of the war outcomes. But here's the truth. On the ground in Iran, there's been no major civilian uprising. In fact, many Iranians, even those critical of the regime, are rallying around the flag. For an Indian audience watching this entire situation unfold, this isn't just about the Middle East. It's a test of how far global powers are willing to go to redraw the red lines, with nuclear sites, national sovereignty, and now regime change back on the table.
All right, with that, we wrap things up on this edition of India Global. Thanks so very much for watching. Up ahead, news and updates will continue.
It feels good knowing that your future's in hand. Evlo can offer you a loan from £1,000 to £15,000, whether it's for home improvements, new appliances, a car, or for some of life's big moments. So even if you've had problems with credit before, Evlo looks beyond your credit score and always takes a case-by-case approach. Visit evlo.co.uk to get your conditional decision in minutes. Evlo, your future in your hands.
If your garage looks like this, you need Tougher Man. A leading supplier of shelving for your home or business. Assembly is quick, easy and boltless. Buy 1 bay from just $59.99, or you can get 3 bays from only $119.99, saving you nearly £60. Plus you get a 5-year Storelex steel guarantee. Order now at tougherman.co.uk.
Witness the fitness, the clock will tell 11. One hope, one quest.
Tomorrow starts tonight. IKEA, the wonderful everyday.
Someone's happy. Get that lucky cow feeling with luckycowbingo.com/bingo. The site that's bursting with beautiful bingo games. 75 ball bingo. Even 90 ball bingo. Fill your bingo boots today. Get that lucky cow feeling at luckycowbingo.com/bingo or download the Lucky Cow Android app from the Play Store.
Visit bingoaliens.com/bingo for a cosmic range of bingo games, taking bingo to another dimension at bingoaliens.com/bingo.
I bought cars on finance, so I've made my claim.
If our lenders charge hidden commissions, then I've made my claim.
I could be owed thousands.
I've made my claim.
I've made my claim.
I've made my claim.
I've made my claim. It's so quick and simple.
You could be owed thousands in hidden commissions from vehicles bought on finance since 2007, even without the details.
I've made my claim.
Trust myclaimgroup.co.uk.
Claims made simple.
When Tony passed, we wanted to celebrate him his way. All he ever spoke about was bite this, bite that. I'll never forget our first date. Huge grin on his face as he rode up on that big noisy thing. And that's exactly the way he'd want to be remembered.
At Co-op Funeral Care, we know everyone is different. That's why we offer funeral plans to funeral services that are personal, every step of the way.
Air fryer. It fries using air.
Everybody's looking for that something.
Britain, what you buy is your business. Helping you pay less interest is ours.
You know how much that means. You found that special thing.
Air fryer.
You're flying It's without fries
wings. Barclaycard. Make money work for you.
Witness the fitness, the clock will tell 11. One hope, one quest.
Tomorrow starts tonight. IKEA, the wonderful everyday.
You ever thought about yours?
Funeral? Yeah.
Flowers, service.
Everyone there. The more the merrier.
Even your ex, Mark?
It sounds a bit mad.